Does the idea of increasing your income ever make you feel uneasy, conflicted, or even guilty? What if instead you saw it as an act of faith, stewardship, and obedience to God's calling? Today, we're going to demystify wealth creation for pastors by exploring King Solomon's wisdom to know the condition of your flocks, found in Proverbs 27:23-27. So what does this ancient principle mean for pastors and churches today? We'll discuss it in this episode of the More Than a Pastor Show. Let's get started. What's good, my friend, and welcome to the More Than a Pastor Show. I'm Rich Avery, your host. This is a show where we help pastors, missionaries, and other ministry leaders to grow your income and build financial security. We'll help you take your skills, experience, and ministry know-how and to leverage them into sustainable income outside the church through a business or a side hustle that's right for you, so you can serve God and provide for your family, no matter what. Thanks so much for joining me today. I always appreciate the opportunity we have to spend some time together. If you're new to the show, you can learn more about me, get the show notes for today's episode, and download some free resources to help you grow your income and build financial security. It's all over at my website at morethanapastor.com/81 for episode 81. Have you ever noticed how some Christians, especially pastors, get uneasy when the topic of wealth creation comes up? I hear from them from time to time when I talk about how to grow your income here on the show, and I'm sure I'll probably hear from some after this episode. Many believe it's more biblical to be content with what you have, rather than pursue financial growth. After all, didn't the Apostle Paul say, if we have food and clothing, we should be content with those things? That's 1 Timothy 6:8. And some even go so far as to think that the pursuit of wealth itself is evil. Yet, throughout Scripture, don't we see clear instruction on stewardship, diligence, and increasing what we've been given? Not for selfish gain, but so we can provide for our families and be generous in blessing others. Somewhere between the warning against exhausting yourself by chasing after wealth in Proverbs 23 and the caution against laziness in Proverbs 6, somewhere in the middle, there's a balance that we need to find, a balanced approach to money. I've always found Proverbs 27, verses 23-27, particularly helpful, where Solomon urges us to be sure to know the condition of your flocks. So today, let's take a closer look at this passage and explore the insights it offers on wealth creation. I'm going to read the passage. It'll be from the New Living Translation, Proverbs 27, verses 23-27. Be sure you know the condition of your flocks. Give careful attention to your herds. For riches do not endure forever, and a crown is not secure for all generations. When the hay is removed and new growth appears and the grass from the hills is gathered in, the lambs will provide you with clothing and the goats with the price of a field. You will have plenty of goat's milk to feed your family and to nourish your female servants. So what does Proverbs 27 verses 23-27 teach us about wealth creation? Well, at first glance, I think a passage about flocks and herds might seem irrelevant for most of us who are not farmers or ranchers. But I believe this passage is packed with timeless principles about how we steward the resources God has entrusted to us. So I've got several insights I want to share, 6 insights from this passage about what it teaches us about wealth creation. Point number 1 is that God has given us the potential for wealth. The flocks and herds in this passage, if you think about it, what do they represent? They represent wealth. The flocks and herds represent wealth, but not wealth that's fully realized yet. They were resources entrusted by God to the farmer, and they have the potential to generate income, provide clothing, and sustain the farmer's household, but only if they're nurtured. Point number 2 is recognizing and cultivating our wealth potential is good stewardship. I believe that wealth creation is a matter of stewardship. Or said another way, the natural result of good stewardship is growth, is increase, is wealth. We cultivate something with the hope that it multiplies and grows in value, right? And that, at its most basic level, is the definition of wealth creation. So what does that mean for us today? Well, I believe God has placed resources in our lives. Look at the resources that we have: our time, our preaching, teaching, and writing skills, talents, relationships, finances, opportunities God has put before us. These resources have incredible potential both inside and outside our current ministry role, but they require effort, investment, and care to produce results. Wealth creation at its basic level is recognizing and cultivating the resources that God has entrusted to us so they grow and produce and increase. Point number 3 is stewardship requires intentional effort on our part. This passage emphasizes that we should know the condition of our flocks and give careful attention to them. Why? For what purpose? Because the farmer can't simply buy sheep and forget them. He has to feed them. He has to protect and nurture them for months before they produce any value. Similarly, we can't expect our resources to thrive if we neglect them. Whether it's our finances, career, relationships, or our spiritual lives, we must actively nurture them and invest time, money, and effort to help them to flourish. Stewardship requires an intentional effort on our part, and neglect leads to missed opportunities and diminished potential. Point number 4 is resources lose their value without protection and maintenance. This passage warns that wealth creation isn't static or guaranteed. Riches don't last forever, and predators can destroy the flocks if they aren't protected. That's why we must be diligent in investing and maintaining our resources to ensure that they grow. Here's a basic truth: if our assets are not increasing, they're effectively shrinking due to inflation. And over the past 5 years, the cost of essentials here in the U.S., like food, fuel, household goods, and utilities, they've risen 20 to 25%, with some categories even going up to 50%. The average family now spends more than $17,000 more per year just to maintain the standard of living they had in 2021, just 4 years ago. Pastor, if your income hasn't kept pace with inflation, your wealth has actually declined. And for most pastors I know, that's exactly what's happening, because our churches they're not able to match inflation with a cost of living increase. And so for many pastors, their income is actually decreasing because it's worth less than it was before. Number 5, faithful stewardship results in increased wealth. Farmers plant seeds expecting a harvest. Business owners create products and services expecting a profit. And God gives us resources expecting us to grow them. But for many pastors, financial stewardship does not work that way. Instead of creating a financial increase, pastors rely on those who do. We ask for support from people who've built their wealth through their own work and faithful stewardship. And maybe that's why so many pastors struggle with the idea of making money. Unlike entrepreneurs who invest and expect a return, we're used to managing expenses, not multiplying income. And since our income comes from donations, not from direct sales or services, the idea of actually growing wealth can feel foreign or maybe even unspiritual. My last point is this. Number 6, wealth is a means, not an end. The flocks in this passage, they have an important purpose. They're not an end unto themselves. They've been fed and nurtured to provide clothing, food, and ongoing financial resources for the farmer and everyone in his household. In the same way, the resources God entrusts to us are tools for fulfilling His purposes in our lives. When we feed and nurture or cultivate them, they create wealth that allows us to bless others, support our families, and generously contribute to the work of His kingdom. So, why is this discussion important today? It's because I believe a mindset shift around wealth creation is crucial for the future of the church. Are you noticing how the traditional church funding model is becoming increasingly unstable for many churches? Major social, political, and economic shifts like the Great Dechurching are disrupting congregations, shrinking attendance, and reducing financial support from tithes and offerings. As millions of people are disengaging from organized religion, so many churches are struggling to survive. And if your church isn't feeling the strain already, it probably will be soon. The question isn't if we need to adapt to this new reality, it's how. And friends, I believe it's time for pastors to unlock their wealth creation. One crucial change for long-term sustainability is for churches to embrace a co-vocational ministry model, where pastors can generate a significant portion of their income outside the church through a job in the marketplace or through their own business or side hustle. And the beauty of this model is that pastors don't have to rely solely on the church for their income. By launching a business or a side hustle, they have the potential to grow their income while reducing the financial strain that the church feels for being responsible for the pastor's complete income and salary and benefits. Pastors, God has already placed the seeds of wealth potential in your life. The key is recognizing and cultivating them as a wise steward for God's glory. Your skills, experience, and ministry know-how can translate into sustainable income streams that could supplement or replace your current ministry income so you can serve God and provide for your family, no matter what happens. The good news is that it's never been easier to start a meaningful business or side hustle. Wealth isn't something to fear. It's simply the increase that comes from wise stewardship. And when we manage it well, it not only blesses us, but it empowers us to bless others. Pastors, I think it's time to unlock your church's wealth potential too. God has already provided your church with amazing resources and assets. Your people, property, and programming. These are things that could be cultivated into alternative revenue streams to fund the mission that God's given you, in addition to whatever tithes and offerings you're receiving. Again, the key is to recognize and cultivate these resources to unlock the potential to generate income for your church. The future of ministry funding is shifting as attendance and giving patterns change. It's no longer about receiving and managing resources. It's going to be about multiplying them. So, Pastor, let me ask you, as the future of ministry funding is shifting, will you in your church shift with it? I have a few questions to ask that might help you to apply and take action on the things I'm sharing today here in this episode. My first question is this: what's your money mindset? Have you thought about wealth creation? Not just as a way to provide for your family, but as a tool to bless others and to fuel God's kingdom? What skills, talents, and resources do you have that could generate income outside the church? If you're not sure, just make a list of 20 things. Things that you're good at, things that you love, things that people ask you to help with, things that you could teach and show others how to do. And then number 3, just pick one from that list of 20 things. Is there something on this list that you could be making money for you right now if you just took action? Is there a skill, a talent, or something that you own? Could you rent it out, sell a service, turn it into an offer? And fourth, run an experiment. Think of 10 ways you can make $1,000 with that one thing in the next 90 days, and then go for it. And the fifth one is this: Shift your perspective. Good stewardship isn't just about managing resources. It's about multiplying them. And that mindset shift isn't just important for you as a pastor. I believe it's critical for the future of the church as well. Well, that's it for today's episode. Thanks again for joining me. I really appreciate it. I'd love to get your feedback. If any of those questions or anything I shared in this episode has prompted some thoughts or questions in your mind, or maybe you're not sure, like, boy, I can't think of 20 things I'm good at or I could do, I'd be glad to help brainstorm some options with you. But feel free to give me feedback. You can reach me at rich@morethanapastor.com. Again, rich@morethanapastor.com. And I'll put my email address in the show notes, and you can check that out again at morethanapastor.com/81 for episode 81. Well, until next time, remember that you are more than a pastor. Saying yes to God's call doesn't mean you have to say yes to feeling stuck, broke, or unfulfilled in your life and ministry. Let's work together and help you create the life, impact, and income that you were made for.